Sharma, and he will be speaking on cold environment exacerbates brain pathology and oxidative stress following TBI, the potential therapeutic effects of a nanowired cerebrolysin.
Thank you. I am very honored that I got this opportunity to show some of our results. I have only two messages: that nowadays traumatic injury in healthy animals alone will not result anything because we have so many different factors like temperature, diseases, and the second thing is that the same drug can have much better effects when it is given as a nano delivery. So I will briefly tell you about this. Yeah, this is of course multi-level collaboration with US Air Force and different organizations. I have interest that there is nothing to disclose. And all the views expressed here are mine. It has nothing to do with the organizations with whom I am working. As we all know that in traumatic brain injury or any insult, lots of endogenous neuroprotective agents and neurodestructive elements are released. So the balance is much more important while we are treating. And we believe that blood-brain barrier is playing a key role. And the idea is that we have to restore the blood-brain barrier function. We have a hypothesis that whenever the leaky capillary is, it is influencing not only neurons but also numerous glial cells that are much more in number. And we are working on this hypothesis that all kinds of insults to the brain opens the barrier in the brain and the spinal cord and making many cellular changes leading to cell death. We would like to reduce these sequences somewhere here or here. Blood-brain barrier is located between the endothelial cells of tight junctions, is the anatomical site. And we replicated in our model that lanthanum 12 angstrom in diameter is not leaky in normal situations. Previously, there are lots of studies when it has been shown that temperature could affect the final outcome. And I will today tell you about the effect of both cold and heat when the injury was done. This is one of the theses by US Navy in which the cold environment exaggerates traumatic injury. This can be found. And here in this audience, I do not need to tell the consequences of brain injury, neither the occurrence. But I can tell you that when our soldiers are in the Middle East, this is very hot, and also they are exposed to dust storm, and then they are also exposed to silica dust. In this particular presentation, I will not go to the silica exposure, and I can tell you also that high altitude warfares cold, and they have different effects on the brain when injury occurs. So these are the areas that we are doing in laboratory models, and I'm showing you, sharing some of the results today with you. This is also another example in missile explosion, gunpowder explosion. Soldiers are breathing those things, and injury can also affect the pathophysiology, so as the drug development or therapy. These are some of the observations that the same kind of injury is much more worsened under the situations of different kinds of insults. As I told you, this is very difficult to produce an animal model of traumatic injury in the laboratory, but we try to mimic some of the things. This is a model of concussive head injury when this weight is dropped over the skull and the fractures were not included. And this is another model of piercing brain injury where after opening of the skull an incision was made. This is the result of open brain injury. As you can see the severity, and here we have just applied topically some of the agents and the results are different. We want to create something that in soldiers something could be applied immediately over the traumatic injury where they could be shifted to well-advanced hospitals for training. So our idea is to thwart or reduce the changes for certain hours. Now the question is, what will happen if the animals were reared at cold or hot for some time? So these are the Norwegian cages where we have exposed our animals either cold or hot environment for 5 to 7 weeks. And the group is 5 degrees Celsius, 34 degrees Celsius, and the normal control is 23 degrees Celsius. I'm showing some of the results with concussive head injury, of course blood-brain barrier disruption, brain edema formation, neuronal injury, and oxidative stress parameters. Finally, I will show you some of the examples where cerebrolizin is given both normal and nano-delivered. I can show you this is the example of a breakdown of the blood-brain barrier from 4 to 24 hours. And the point is that when we have impact on the right side, the concussive head injury, no fracture, the left side shows much more damage than the left side, than the injured side. This may be because of counter-coup mechanisms. And this is the development of edema. It's progressive. Well, this is change from apple to BC, but I can tell you that I will show you some of the other results. Even cold and hot environment, same injury was done. It is much more higher than in normal groups. The same thing happens here, but I can tell you, yeah. Okay, I skip this. Look at these pictures. 34 degrees Celsius, brain injury, and 5 degrees. Both have many more damaged neurons as compared to the 23 degrees Celsius. The perineural edema is much more higher, and the control means sham, they have minimal injury. We are morphologists basically, so we go at electron microscopy. And here you can see that 5 degree and 34 degrees Celsius injury was much more severe than at 23 degrees Celsius. Since there are so many compounds are released after any insult to the brain, we should not rely on any one drug or any one compound or factor. So, of course, we have heard BDNF and many other things, but many neurotrophic factors are released. So this is one commercially available drug called cerebrolizin by an Austrian company. It has a multi-modal drug, and it is a mixture of different kinds of neurotrophic factors and active peptide fragments. Previously, this is a liquid, and it should be injected in milliliter per kilogram. There are some basic experiments done before. So first we have seen these are the changes over 24-hour left and right and 12-hour. This is a progressive neuronal damage. When we have given cerebrolizin in very high doses, 10 milliliter, then you can see that we have some neuroprotection in normal situations. But this cerebrolizin did not do any better neuroprotection when the animals were either reared at 5 degrees or 34 degrees Celsius. Then at the US Department, University of Arkansas Fayetteville, we are labeling cerebrolizin with slow release material, and you can see that when this is delivered, it is releasing slowly like a mini osmotic pump in the system. And my point is to show you some of the oxidative stress parameters changes. As you know that this is the control level of malondialdehyde, glutathione, and glucogen N, luminol, and mild peroxidase. Glutathione levels were decreased after injury, and all other levels were increased. But you can see here that at 5 degrees Celsius and even 34 degrees Celsius, they were increased very much significantly, and the glutathione level is decreased significantly than the normal animals, and all other parameters were increased. Due to shortage of time, I am showing you only nanovar cerebrolizin delivery at 34 degrees Celsius. You can see that these levels given 4 to 8 hours after injury, almost nearly normal level. What is the significance of these things? I am showing this 10 milliliter of cerebrolizin in normal animals. You can see here that high dose was preventing at 24 hour, and this is cerebrolizin treatment. And here is the result of nanovar cerebrolizin, 24 hour right and left, and here you can see that neurobill is quite preserved. And these are the cellular level of examples. I can show you 5 degrees Celsius, 34 degrees Celsius, much more damage than the normal situation. They are also injured. But 5 milliliter of nanovars delivery shows better protection, whereas normal cerebralizing is not showing that much in these cases. So we can say that on the basis of these results that animals subjected to cold or hot environments have different level of oxidative stress, adversely affecting brain function. Nanovar cerebralizing in low doses is quite effective, even given 6 to 8 hours after, whereas normal cerebralizing requires higher dose. We can say that rearing temperature affects brain pathology, and we require to change the modulation of the drug therapy. In this case, I have showed you nano delivery, but either it should be increased in dose or in other ways. This is very important. And cold and hot both aggravates the pathophysiology of brain injury. And these findings have some strategic significance that we are working on these things. And these are our supporters at various organizations. We have generous funds, my collaborators, and I thank you very much for your kind attention.
All right, any questions?
Have you ever had a chance to compare pathologies of players from ice hockey versus football players?
Not yet. I do not have cases, but we have some cases in football players in concussive head injury, and we have some materials. But the point is that it is very difficult to compare 6 or 24 hours injury in rat when they live 2 years, and 8 hours or 24 hours of human injury, people can live 70 years averagely. So these are very complicated material, but the question is very valid. Thank you.
Yes.
Apologies if I have missed it. So, were you trying to say that the cold environment is better as opposed to subjecting them to hypothermia after injury?
There are two things. First thing, hypothermia is another thing when the injury is done and hypothermia is made. Hypothermia can protect. This is the literature. But when animals are reared at cold environment, that is entirely different than simple hypothermia. So here we have done in these situations. We have done also some experiments when the animals are anesthetized and down to the hypothermia. They have some protection. Okay, but when animals are reared for 5 to 7 weeks in cold environment, then neck injury. This is entirely different pathophysiological observations.
So assuming like we want these drugs to bypass the blood-brain barrier, wouldn't it be an advantage for us that the blood-brain barrier is disrupted rather than intact?
This is another problem. In all the neurological diseases, you can see that blood-brain barrier is broken down. And the first point is very important to restore this barrier. But the drug delivery point is that this is also an obstacle that many drugs cannot go because of the blood-brain barrier. But in injury cases, the blood-brain barrier is leaky, and some of the drugs, when given by nano delivery, they can go the barrier very easily. But this depends on another problem, that these nanomaterials, when they are not, for example, dissolvable, they can stay there for longer times, for 2 years or even 3 years. So these are very difficult problems. But I can only show here that nano delivery of the good compound has better neuroprotective effects than the parent compound. There could be also some compound, if you give by nano delivery, they don't do anything.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for attending the session.
Thank you.
चलो भाग आप गया